Welcome to Real News. So, more evidence continues to mount against former IRS official Lois Lerner as newly released emails obtained by watchdog group Judicial Watch this week shed new light on Lerner's collusion between the IRS and now the Department of Justice. The emails revealed Lerner talked with Justice Department officials about seeking criminal prosecutions of tax-exempt groups that allegedly lied about political activity on their applications. Now, in response to a call she received from the Director of Elections Crimes Branch at the DOJ, which I didn't even know existed, Lerner emailed the former Chief of Staff of the acting IRS Commissioner, Nicole Flax, on May 8, 2013. She said he wanted to know who at IRS the DOJ folks could talk to about Senator Whitehouse idea at the hearing that DOJ could piece together a false statement case about applicants who lied on their 1024s, saying they weren't planning on doing political activity and then turning around and making large visible political expenditures. Now, Flax, she replied and she said, "I think we should do it." But then Lerner directed another IRS employee to start setting up meetings with DOJ to follow up on all of this. Well, House Government and Oversight Committee Chair Representative Darrell Issa, whose committee just last week voted to hold Lerner in contempt of Congress, he issued a statement in reaction to the latest revelations. He said, "We cannot tell the American people that we have done all we can do to get to the truth in this investigation if we offer a pass to a critical witness like Ms. Lerner." He also went on to say that the new release of new documents underscores the political nature of IRS Tea Party targeting and the extent to which supposed apolitical officials took direction from elected Democrats. These emails are part of an overwhelming body of evidence that political pressure from prominent Democrats led to the targeting of Americans for their political beliefs. Fellow committee member Representative Jim Jordan, he also weighed in saying, "Now I see why the IRS is scared to give up the rest of Lois Lerner's emails." Joining us tonight is Tom Fitton, the president of Judicial Watch, the public interest group that investigates government corruption and also released the emails revealing new information on the IRS scandal. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, Tara, thanks for having me.
So I looked at all of this, and last week we talked about Lois Lerner at length because of everything that went on there between the criminal suggestion of criminal prosecution coming out of Ways and Means and then the contempt of Congress vote coming out of Oversight and Reform. Now, your revelations show a new aspect of this, which is the Department of Justice. Why does this matter?
Well, it matters because the debate until now was an argument over whether the IRS improperly stonewalled and delayed the application for exemption under Section 501c4 of the Internal Revenue Code. Now the debate's about whether the Obama administration was talking about prosecuting their political opponents and putting them in jail. Here we had a Democratic senator in April of last year hold a big hearing suggesting that all these C4s, which were largely conservative, be prosecuted for lying about what they were planning in terms of political spending. And Lerner, the email showed before that hearing, said, you know, the law is hard there. You really can't do that. Nevertheless, the Justice Department follows up with her, and the wheels begin turning in the IRS to cooperate with the Justice Department about the idea of possibly prosecuting the president's political enemies, and that's what was at issue here.
Right, and one of the email that you're talking to, just so we can tell our viewers, the email you're talking to from Lois Lerner was prior to Senator Whitehouse's committee hearing in April 2013. She sent it in March, and she said this is their latest push to shut these down, talking about C4s. One IRS prosecution would make an impact, and they wouldn't feel so comfortable doing the stuff. Right? Is that what you're talking about?
Right. And she understood what the basis and the motivation was behind this idea of prosecuting the president's political enemies. And they had the hearing. Justice Department said, well, we got to respond. We got to start doing something. And if we do something, we'll get in the way of the IRS. Presumably, we know was asked of the IRS as Lois Lerner. This conversation took place a day or two before Lois Lerner finally admitted through the speech at the American Bar Association that indeed they were improperly suppressing the Tea Party and picking out conservative applications for tax exemption for improper scrutiny. And presumably that shut down the Justice Department criminal prosecution ideas because everything blew up after that.
Well, I'm glad Tom actually brought that up, because we have a timeline, and that fits into the timeline of events of some of the more major egregious actions by Lois Lerner that we're continuing to build the case. So we know that in March or April of 2010 is when this IRS targeting began, and that was shortly after the Citizens United ruling in 2010, which is important. And then you move on in 2011, Lois Lerner calls conservative groups dangerous, which was problematic. Then you have in June 2011, there was Dave Camp's committee, the Ways and Means, began to open an investigation into what's going on here, because there were some complaints about C4s being targeted. Then in July of 2012, Lerner starts preparing her cover story, what they're going to do here with this. And then you move into 2013, which is where Judicial Watch's emails start to play into this whole thing. And right here in May of 2013, shortly before she pleads the Fifth, she goes and speaks in front of the ABA, and where there was a planted question, and they were starting to go into damage control when she blamed the lower level Cincinnati emails and this lower level Cincinnati staffers for this. And then May 2013, a couple days later, she said this.
Because I'm asserting my right not to testify, I know that some people will assume that I've done something wrong. I have not.
And then here we are now.
So just so I'm clear, because there's all this stuff that's been talked about in the different hearings and what you said and different sets of emails. In the most current batch of emails, there's nothing specific where she said that we want to use this idea to go after conservatives, but it's only that she was trying to hide the fact that she had been possibly colluding with members of the Obama administration. That is the main problem. That's about right?
I think so, and I think also that she and many people around her continue to think that she didn't do anything wrong, that by going after these C4s that they were breaking the law, and that's where we run into trouble, because a lot of Republicans and conservatives seem to agree with the court and the Citizens United decision that C4s could raise, this money, and that speech and, free speech was defined by, allowing these groups to do this, and a lot of Democrats and liberals don't. So that's where we're continuing to get this philosophical battle.
Well, and I think it's important that in this, as the story continues to come out, that it's important, because it still is probably going to look like, why would somebody in the IRS not be talking to people in the Department of Justice or not be talking to members of Congress?
Well, to your point, Anthony, that was what Lois Lerner's attorney claimed. His response to these latest emails was, quote, "It was the responsibility of the Exempt Organizations Division to assess whether organizations which were seeking or had been granted tax-exempt status did not violate the restrictions on political activity. It ought not to be a surprise that Ms. Lerner had discussions with colleagues about how best to enforce those restrictions."
I mean, that is the defense, is that all conservatives did
it.
I think this is much more likely than that we're going to find an email from Barack Obama to Lois Lerner saying, do it. I think much more, seriously though, I think much more likely here is that this is the product of the general freak out about the Tea Party that the left has had. Now, she obviously sympathizes with the Obama administration. That's obviously where Lois Lerner is coming from. You get this in, for example, the drug war, where someone stands up and they say, I think heroin should be legalized. And the DEA is like, well, they're probably using it, which isn't always the case. Similarly, with anti-tax groups, there's this idea that if you're against taxes and you're against the government, then you're probably likely to cheat on your taxes. You're probably likely to be dishonest with it. So I think that a lot of this is probably actually unwritten. It's just an instinct that bled over into the IRS.
But I understand the questions you're asking, Anthony, actually, and I want to put these to Tom if I can. Let me do this, Tom. I hear your conclusion that this is evidence towards President Obama's desire to punish his political enemies. But I want to connect the dots, not backwards from that conclusion, but forwards from what we have, if you wouldn't mind. First of all, it wouldn't be odd, correct, for the IRS and the DOJ to be communicating with each other about criminal prosecutions, right? That's probably par for the course.
In this context, it is odd. Yes, it is.
In this context? What I'm suggesting is this. We take evidence one at a time. First of all, the fact that they're communicating isn't necessarily evidence of anything. From there, we have to connect another dot. And what that dot ought to be is that they were either going to selectively prosecute, in other words, just focus on conservative groups, or that they shouldn't be prosecuting for potentially lying on these documents in the first place. In other words, we need to see the wrongdoing, and it doesn't seem to me that the wrongdoing is simply the communication.
Look, what's going on here is that you had these groups operating in accordance with IRS regulations. And the left came up with the idea saying, well, we've decided that what they've been doing for years is all of a sudden too political and in violation of the forms they signed. So let's prosecute them. And it wasn't geared at the left, it was geared at the right. And the context of the emails is an attack on the crossroads of the political battles that were going on, the right groups, not the left groups. So, I mean, it wasn't like there were leftist groups in the crosshairs here. And the context is, as she's talking to the Justice Department about targeting, for the first time in history, C4s for doing what the IRS allows them to do, you have Lois Lerner knowing at the time that TITCA has concluded they were improperly targeting conservatives, as it is. So we already know the IRS was improperly targeting conservatives. Now we know the Justice Department was sniffing around the very same issue, and rather than just delaying applications, they were thinking of putting people in jail, almost all of whom which happened to be opposed to the president's agenda.
Well, it's also my understanding that there were emails where the Tea Party organizations, Tea Party movement, Tea Party patriots, the discussion of those being trigger names and titles, that was discussed between Lois Lerner and her aides, as well as the fact that, you know, if they hadn't had the Inspector General investigation into this, we may have never known what was going on in the first place. So, Tom, we appreciate you for joining us tonight.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate the coverage.
Expressing views deemed un-PC is becoming an increasingly hazardous pastime around the Western world. When we come back, Will Kane asks if the left's demand for ideological conformity poses a threat to free speech.